Well, Scott, thank you for joining us at infamoushorrors.com tonight. For those who may not know you, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. My name is Scott Schiaffo. I'm a character actor and musician. You may or may not know me if you're an indie film fan from the 90s. I played the Chulies Gum guy in Kevin Smith's debut film, Clerks. Did a lot of, um, I won't say guesting, but there's been some cameos in some of his other projects. All of us were recently in the reboot. I had done an episode of Comic Book Man along the way. And I've done a good handful of low budget independent films over the last almost 25, 30 years now. I also do scoring here in my studio. So I feel blessed to have what I call a grassroots career, which it keeps me going. And I'm very proud of the work I've got to do. But certainly, I don't get mobbed at the quick check.
Right. So let's talk about early on in your career. You kind of had a breakout role in, like you said, in Clerks when that came out. And just how did that come about with how you were introduced to Kevin Smith?
Well, I actually saw an audition notice, and there's a, I would say it's a myth, but over the years, there's been a lot of different cool stories about how the film actually came to be. And a lot of people think that everybody in the cast is either a friend of his or a family member. And that's just not true. Myself, Brian O'Halloran, Marilyn Gigliotti, Lisa Spoonhour, we all saw an ad and showed up to an audition. We were strangers. We didn't know Kevin. I'm from northern New Jersey. I'm like 10 or 15 minutes outside of New York City. So I'm not anywhere really down in his area either. I'm a Jersey guy my whole life. I know most of Jersey and I enjoy South Jersey and the shore and whatnot. But bottom line is, I saw an ad for an audition notice and I went down to the theater where they were having it at Atlantic Highlands. Um, the Clerks box set, the 15th anniversary, I think it is. Oh no, the 10th
Yeah.
anniversary, the Xbox. There's a really great documentary on there called The Snowball Effect. And there's a new documentary coming out with Kevin too, which really goes into this stuff in detail. But again, I saw an ad, went down, auditioned. Thankfully, they liked what they saw at the audition. You didn't read from the script at the audition, you did a prepared monologue. And they called me back. And then the second time, I got to read from the script, and it was exciting.
And
Good
so
stuff.
that was like you're getting the foot in the door of what you do today. Like you said, you've been acting in independent films for like the past 25 years and you even score now. So you kind of have a foot in like every door just to keep you busy, especially now when we live in quarantine. If you don't get any acting gigs, you may get some scoring gigs. So how did you get into film composition?
Well, I've been a musician longer than an actor since I was very young. I had a lot of passion for music. Uh, I was born in the '60s, so the Beatles. When the Beatles did Ed Sullivan, I was just a baby. I wasn't old enough to really understand. But my mother said that when they came on, I started wiggling around and laughing and dancing or whatever. But I grew up in love with music and films. Um, so I was a musician and still am from a very early age. The acting started later. It started in high school and then into college and in my 20s. And then towards the tail end of my 20s, I began to take the acting a little more seriously. And I had put the music down a little bit. I was playing in clubs all throughout my 20s, all throughout college, playing in different rock bands, playing in original bands. So I have a music background. So getting to do the scoring, it was I would say it was a real simple or easy fit into it, but I had always had an interest in composing music other than rock and pop.
Right.
And I had the opportunity early on to score a film. I was the lead in a film by Tom Zanka. It's called Linger. It's available on DVD and it's available for streaming, I believe, on Amazon. Linger. Tom Zanka, phenomenal writer director. He was one of the first guys to open the door to me to do the scoring for a film. And I had a good experience with that. And then it began to snowball. A lot of films I was working on, if they didn't have a musician or a composer or anybody working on the score, I was vying for the gig. So it began to be a thing where once I began and the work was starting to speak for itself, thankfully, people were getting, granted, it was two different contracts, one to act and one to do the music. I even got into post production at one point. I even did a couple of films. I was in the cast, I did the music, and I also did some editing. So, computers make it all possible. I've had a home studio since before computers, but I'm a pretty big computer geek. So I got a chance to do a little bit of it all.
Yeah, and especially recently, you were casted in quite a few independent horror films. Like last year, you were in Darkness Awaits, I think, and
Correct.
that was an awesome flick. Let's talk about how you got involved with that.
Sure. Libby McDermott and Matt Stolley. I've known them for a while on the scene, on the circuit, the indie film world well, now it's global, obviously. I was going to say on the East Coast, but now it's a global thing and we're all connected through social media. I had met them at a convention a number of years ago with David Madison, who I co-host the End of the Night podcast with. And she had done Dead Woman's Hollow, which was her first feature film. And Darkness Waits is a sequel to that. So we had gotten to know one another, and I was a supporter of her first film. And she was a good friend with Dave Madison. And Dave Madison is a guy I've known quite a while now. And, any friend of David's is a friend of mine. When Libby was putting together Darkness Waits, she sent me the script to look at the mayor. And I loved the roles. They did a fine job writing it. It was a lot of fun. It was a featured character. It wasn't a lead, which was fine by me. That's kind of my thing. I enjoy being just a character actor. I have played some leads, but I enjoy doing the character stuff. And it was a great fit. I got to work with people I knew also. I knew them they were peers before I got to work with them, which was nice. So, and there's some very, very wonderful performances in that film. I just before we started the discussion tonight, AJ, a friend had reached out. There's going to be a screening. I wish I had the details. I don't know. There's going to be another screening in a theater of Darkness Waits coming soon in Waynesboro. It's been available online. It's been available through Amazon. It's available through a few other things like Tubi or Tubby. I'm not sure how that's pronounced.
I think it's
Tubi.
Tubi, I think.
Tubi, yeah. But there's going to be a screening, and on my social media, I will definitely post. Unfortunately, I probably won't be able to make that. I'm like 6 hours outside of Waynesboro, but the film plays really well on the big screen. They did a wonderful, wonderful job from soup to nuts. Everything from the direction, the camera work, the artwork, the set design. Many, many, many wonderful actors, people who have been at it a while and people who are new, all give very spirited performances. I'm not sure if you said, yeah, you're aware of it or you have seen it. You've seen it or?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a really interesting, moody film, and they did a wonderful job with it.
Yeah, and you've been in so many different genres and stuff. Just what do you look for in a script when you read for your part? Like, is there anything that stands out to you when you're reading a script?
Well, that's a really cool question. People sometimes who aren't part of the business forget that for those of us who are pursuing it professionally, it becomes a big part of your livelihood. Hopefully, it's a part of what some people, it's all their income. Some people, it's, I juggle a few things. I do the music, I have the studio, I'm character actor. So I got a couple of balls up in the air juggling. I know I'll take some heat for saying balls up in the air. But I juggle a few things. So, I'm always looking to stay working. And I'm fortunate to where, because I have other things going on in the pipeline, I can be somewhat picky about choosing a film because I do like the script, or I do like the character, or I like the director. I don't think I've done a film where it was solely just for the bread. Um, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, actors that, this is what they do. So there's a lot of actors who take gigs that they're not particularly crazy about the script, but I'm very fortunate because I can be somewhat selective. I usually have to be interested in the director, interested in the story or the character, or all three. And those are what I look for. I look for something that's in my wheelhouse, but yet a challenge, and maybe something I haven't done something like before, which is always fun. And I love all the different genres too. I love comedy, I love horror, I love drama. Um, so I've been fortunate to get a little bit of action in all of those places.
Yeah, and like we were talking about before we were recording, you yourself have a podcast too that you're like maybe like a co-host on. And how has that been working for you?
Well, that's a wonderful outlet. I have to say that we were talking earlier, you and I'm fortunate again because I am asked to be on a lot of podcasts, and it's great. I mean, I don't think I really don't say no, because to me, it's a win-win. If somebody has the passion and the energy to do it, like yourself, you start a YouTube channel, however you're getting it out there, to me, it's worth my time to talk with whomever's interested. So I pretty much almost, say yes to just about every podcast thing I'm asked to do. And as a result, I get to do a lot of them. So to do my own, I did not really feel like I wanted to take on the burden of having to run a show and sort of having the whole thing rest on my shoulders. But Dave Madison, wonderful guy, really fine filmmaker, and a good friend of mine too. He was taking that on, and he was having all types of really wonderful guests, and said, "Listen, you come on and you co-host whenever you feel comfortable." And over the past year, I was enjoying it more and more and more. And now we recently relaunched, and I am the official unofficial co-host.
Yeah, and you're kind of with the Romero Indie Brigade podcast team, aren't you?
Well, there's been a change of the guard. I was part of uh, the End of the Night with David Madison, which was on the Indie Brigade network. There were some, I don't know if there was differences of how bands have I forget what they call it. What's that
Uh,
stock?
Creative differences, kind of.
Right. I don't know what it was, but there were some things that were not working well for all the people involved. Joe Ridgely, who's a wonderful guy, he's part of the Indie Brigade, and George Romero, I don't know him that well, but I got to know him a bit, and I always had a fine time with George. He seems like a wonderful guy. I wasn't involved in the business side, so I don't know what happened or had to change, but we went on a hiatus for about a month in March, and Joe Ridgely and David came up to bring the show back. I think the Indie Brigade on a whole is taking a hiatus. I think there's not much going
Yeah.
on with it now. So George is a sweet guy, and he really understands and knows the indie filmmakers' passions, and he gets it. So I hope that all works out, and we see a lot more of him. And he was working with heavy metal, I think, as well. They had a lot of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, he
But
has his own comic book out now, which is
right, I mean, he's a
it's
busy guy.
yeah.
He
And
does a lot.
he even started DEF CON 1, which was a virtual Comic Con. And so
Right.
how did you get involved with that? Because you were one of the many guests on that virtual weekend Comic Con they had.
Right. Well, this was before it really started to become a thing. I think they say that Indie Brigade has the first virtual con ever. I don't know that if it's 100% true or not, and but it's a pretty cool thing that it was one of the absolute first, and it was all because of this dreaded COVID. So again, I was involved in the end of the night with Dave Madison. George Romero was one of the main people involved with the Indie Brigade network where we were doing it on, and asked myself and a few of my peers, "Would you like to do uh, a virtual con?" It's kind of a first, and to me, I was all in because, hey, we were knee deep in the pandemic. Really, it was early on. It might have been March or April or whenever it
Yeah,
was. It
it was
was
like
early.
one of the first few months when it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was still. I mean, it's still not great. Thankfully, it's getting better. We've got the all of the vaccines and things are getting better. Yes, but this was right at the beginning of the madness. So to do a virtual con was like the way to go. To still stay connected to all the people who support the films, and everybody now has the technology. Most people have the technology in their home office or in their living room to tune in and check it out, which is pretty cool when you think about it.
Well, Scott, is there anything else you want to promote? Any new projects you're working on currently?
Well, I would like to have people come check out the end of the night. You can come to my Facebook or to Twitter or to my Instagram. It's all at my name. And I run it it's a very open kind of social network that I'm doing. I post all of the links. I post links to all of the projects I'm working on. Darkness Waits is going to be screened sometime in the coming weeks or months. I didn't get the date, but they're going to be showing it again in Waynesboro. It's available on Amazon. Wits End by David Lee Madison, which I also had the pleasure of being in the cast along with Brian O'Halloran. And I did the score for Wits End, and that's a really fine film. A real, to me, it's let's say groundbreaking indie because everybody, they kind of come down on your heart if you use
Oh
terms and
yeah. And like
so
especially the scariest film of all time. If you use
right,
that in
yeah.
a tagline, it's yeah.
Wits End is definitely one of the first uh, low budget man versus nature type of films. So that I'm sure I could say without it being incorrect. But it's beautifully shot and it's well crafted, and I really enjoyed working on the score for that. That's Wits End, available on Tubi or Amazon, or I believe the DVD will be coming out this fall. Blu-rays too, which I miss discs so much. I know that.
I do. I can't even go to my Best Buy anymore. I have to get all my stuff from Amazon now.
Yeah, you don't have a local Best Buy anymore, huh?
No, ours we do. It's just they don't really sell physical media anymore.
So Best Buy has gone along and they cut the physical media by you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a bummer, man. Hey, listen, I love technology and I love streaming, but at the same time, I really do miss the old days because I'm ancient. I grew up with all the ancient formats: LPs, vinyl, CDs, cassettes, 8 tracks, VHS. I was in high school when VHS became a thing. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, you can rent your favorite movie and bring it home and watch it in your own living room. That was a big, big, crazy, insane, wonderful thing at the time. So to see that go for 20, 30, 40 years almost, and now there's no physical media or there's very little physical
Like even
media.
gaming consoles now are coming out with their own digital edition only, which is crazy to think of.
Yeah, it is. Well, technology is a wonderful beast, but it's a razor's edge. There's good and bad with technology. I do miss bookstores and DVDs and VHS, and I'm afraid that the movie theater, as a movie goer, that experience is going to start tapering off as a result of streaming, as a result of being able to have a brand new movie in your living room on your big screen TV, which is very affordable now. Uh, but there's nothing like seeing a film with a crowd.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think is gonna put a damper on theater going, because I myself am not comfortable going, because I just see it as a future cesspool. Because even if you get these 6 feet uh, social distancing rules in fact, I don't see them really being enforced unless theater ushers start coming back and being a thing.
Right, right. Yeah, we're in a crazy time, AJ. I mean, nobody ever, I know I never saw this kind of thing coming. This has been horrible. And let's quickly say prayers to the people who lost friends and loved ones to this horrible pandemic. It's been really a crazy thing.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been really fun talking to you. And thanks again for taking this opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome, AJ. It was my pleasure. You have a great night, man.
You too.